What's going on, guys? Jared here. This is the Run with Tobe podcast. This is episode 6. I'm here with Andrew. Let's go ahead and get right into it. First off, I just want to give a big shout out and say thank you to everybody who's joining us for possibly the first time. But I also want to give a big shout out to everybody that has been following us. The numbers keep increasing. You guys are amazing. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to what me and this guy over here have to say. It's been kind of really cool to see how our small audience in a short time has grown. So what's going on, Andrew?
Not much, man. And kind of going off what you were saying, it's pretty cool when people actually come up to us and said, I heard your last podcast. It kind of reminds me that there's actually people out there listening. So
it's cool.
Getting feedback from people is cool. Dude, we're well into the new year now. It's been actually a pretty crazy new year, to say the least. But glad we finally got on this podcast. This one almost didn't happen a couple of times, but I'm glad that we stuck with the consistency thing. So good to be here, man. Good to chat again.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's been pretty crazy, man. It was literally heads down until there was no time, or I should say pencils, until people say pencils down, as they say in school, right? Pencils down.
Those SAT tests.
Yeah, we had to say pencils down to get into to get to recording this podcast. It's been really busy. It's been really crazy.
Yes.
We got a bunch of cool projects in the works.
Yep.
Really proud of the stuff that we've been doing, and looking forward to these new projects that we're starting right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we were both in our respective kind of hometowns over Christmas.
Yep.
And we were pitching work while we were still over there,
yep.
Right? And some of that work came through. Some of it got lost, but some of it came through in the beginning of the year. And now we're having to deliver the work that we pitched, which is always the more difficult part.
Right? Right. But it's the fun part.
Yep.
It's definitely the fun part. It's why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we jump into our normal routine, I just want to put a big announcement out there. We are now officially on Spotify.
That's right. Yep.
So I know for some people out there that may not be a huge thing, but for us, that's a huge win. That's more audience for us to reach. It's a huge platform that a lot of people use for not only just music anymore, but now podcasting.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that actually until you told me that we were on it, because I only listen to Spotify for music, but I actually went on there and noticed like how many other podcasters are on there. And, we'll eventually probably talk about this in a future podcast, but podcasting is becoming a really interesting medium to sell advertising through these days as well. So with Spotify and their ad platform and all that, I'm actually kind of curious to see if Apple does really sponsor us on our podcast. Long shot, but
we shot them out enough, that's for sure. Well, cool, man. Let's go ahead and jump into what has caught our attention lately. And mine is a little left field from our normal routine, but I recently just switched myself and my family over to some new health insurance from an old carrier that actually I won't say their name, but they're no longer going to be covering people in California, which is kind of a bummer. But anyway, we switched over to a new company, and I was really impressed with the way that they've branded themselves, because let's be honest, healthcare is actually not that cool.
It's a terrible thing to deal with, man. Yeah,
it's a headache. Everybody.
I just heard you talking on the phone with the insurance agent the other day, and yeah, it was the exact opposite of cool.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. And it's often, like I said, it's not cool at all. But this company has kind of taken a step towards catering to the millennial generation and further into the future in the way that they've done a lot of their rebranding. So they've taken a lot of, things that are really simple, and I guess other insurance carriers just don't want to spend the money to change their ways, but they've taken these really simple ideas and pushed it through their brand to help their branding, starting with their website. Their website's really intuitive. It's very 2018. It's easy to use. There's not a million options inside of it where you can get lost and quickly go down some weird rabbit hole. They allow you to connect your insurance to your Apple Steps and your health monitoring through your phone, which is awesome. And you can get discounts, and you can also get Amazon gift cards through this if you hit certain goals throughout the year. So that's
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool, right? It's a cool way to make something that's uncool traditionally, a lot more futuristic and a lot more now. And their welcome kit is the thing I actually have here in my hands. And we'll link everybody, like we do every show. We'll link all this up in the show notes so you guys can check this stuff out. But the branding pack that they sent, or I should say the welcome pack that they sent, is branded really well. It looks like the physical version of an app. Each one of the cards that has to do with your particular insurance policy looks like a tile that you would see in your phone. So
Cool.
yeah, it looks really cool. And it's got cool graphics on it. It's got really nice looking text and fonts. And it's cool. And the last slide at the end is actually this card. It's like a little pouch. It says, "Let's stick together." And it has their social links on it, which is awesome that they're out there getting themselves on social using that. And I'm sure they're content marketing like crazy. But inside that little pouch, there is 4 Band-Aids, and each Band-Aid has like a little saying on it.
Cool.
And they're branded in the color of Oscar's colors, which is this like royal navy blue. So yeah, it's really cool. It's again, like health insurance obviously is not the coolest thing on planet Earth these days, especially in America.
Most people, when the feeling they get when you have to deal with health insurance is kind of I guess it's pretty safe to say that no one looks forward to dealing with it.
No, it's not fun.
But I think when you showed me this package that they sent over to you, the welcome package, you actually kind of get a cool feeling walking away from it, which is a new feeling when it comes to health insurance. And I think usually you only get a good feeling from health insurance was when you walk away from a really good customer service experience.
Right. Or not having to pay anything because actually covered whatever you needed to get covered.
But when it comes down to something aesthetic like this, it's definitely, it's a different way of projecting a positive feeling with you that's associated with the brand, right?
Yep. Yeah, the app is done really well. It mirrors our website pretty well. You can carry all your insurance cards inside.
Are you going to post pictures of the package?
I am going to post pictures of the package. Yep, we'll put that up in inside of the show notes. And the last thing I want to say, I don't want to go too deep into it, but the last thing is their card, the physical card that they give you, is actually kind of cool looking. I bumped it up in my wallet. It's in front of some others. It's not as far hidden as it used to be.
It took extra places, huh?
Yeah, so now it sits in front of the Costco card instead of behind the Costco card. So yeah, it looks cool when it doesn't look like a weird insurance card. So it made me proud to actually.
No, it kind of looks like a cool like hotel key card.
Yep,
that's kind of what it looks like. And I guess when I saw it too, I kind of told Jared like it's It's funny that you actually don't need to build an app. You don't need to build some crazy website. You can just simply redesign something that's already going out there, which actually costs you nothing to do. Not nothing, but minimal to do, right? So branding is not to say that it's easy, but there's details that count, right?
Yep. So that was the thing that has caught my attention lately. I thought it was really cool. So how about you?
Mine is not nearly as cool. It's actually going.
I don't know, man. It's health insurance.
That's actually a good point. Well, I'm going to talk about finance and investing.
The other uncool thing.
Yeah. So I actually saw. I don't know if everyone out there knows who Richard Quest is. He's a CNN guy, but talks a lot about finance and investing stuff on CNN. And I saw this as more of a marketing funnel sort of thing, but. And we'll post the actual video on the show notes. But basically, what it was a lot of investors they like to get these newsletters, which kind of provide advice on what stocks to buy and what mutual funds, like where you should put your money. And
are these? Sorry to interrupt. Are these more longer term strategies or medium term? Because I would guess that if it's a newsletter. It can't be the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, it's more long-term. Okay. Like day traders aren't signing up for this stuff by any means. But basically what it was like a 60-second ad with him talking about, hey, if you want good advice, if you want X, Y, and Z, then check out our newsletter. And the entire point of that video ad was to get them to click on a link that went to a landing page that went to you signing up for their newsletter. So I thought this was a really interesting way of trying to get people on social media to give you their email address, because ultimately you don't have that one-to-one. And I guess these days you actually have more of a possibility to a one-to-one connection. But with this, it was just trying to basically link up and find a way to capture your email address through an ad. And again, it's bringing people sort of one step further in that funnel to getting into their inbox. So not the coolest thing, not the sexiest thing, but definitely a really good marketing tactic. And we'll post an example of this in the show notes so you can take a look at it.
Cool.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, dude. And for everyone out there, like it's like 80 degrees in LA today, and I think the trees are all like weirded out. And I have like spring allergies, so forgive me if you hear me sneeze or sniffle or whatever through the rest of the podcast. I don't know. The weather is definitely weird out here, and I was talking to our operations manager today, who's based in Boston, and she just said it snowed 3 inches.
Oh,
so
man.
She didn't have any sympathy for me, but but for anyone out there listening, if you hear me all congested or whatever, that's
Not
why.
many do. No one feels bad for us, man. All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and move on. So the newest tool is actually an app that I've been using lately, and this is, I don't want to say super nerdy, but it's pretty nerdy, is this app called Taylor. And it is a screenshot app for your phone. Now, everybody knows how to do a screenshot, but the problem is if you want to do a really long screenshot or multiple screens, you have to stitch them together. It becomes a pain in the butt. So if you want to show like a longer string of text, or, you know, if I wanted to send somebody our entire website, or just something that's a lot longer than one phone screen.
Or you'd have to scroll down, take another screenshot,
right.
Scroll down again, take another one.
Right. This stitches all of those together. So all you have to do is snap off 2, 3, 4, whatever amount of screenshots, put it through this app, and it'll stitch it together.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Again, it's kind of nerdy because not everybody probably uses it, but you can do some really cool stuff with it. You know, if you see something online that you really like, or if you want to show off a picture, you know, or a website is a great example. If we want to show clients a website how it looks in mobile view, you know, we can snap off this longer screenshot, send that to them, and they get a better context of what actually it should look like.
Cool. So what have you started using it for yourself? Same things, like just demoing websites and things like that?
Yeah, I honestly saw it in the App Store and I was like, oh, that looks cool. Let me download it and try it out. But yeah, I started using it because when we go to put portfolios together for ourselves, you know, we want to show our website off in, you know, not only desktop view, but we want to show a mobile view, you know, of what things can look like. This makes it a lot easier. So, and it's really quick. You just rattle off a couple screenshots, put it through the app, and it stitches it together and puts it out in one file.
Cool.
And it does a pretty good job of overlaying things and cropping them in the proper area so that you don't get double up pieces of the
kind of like taking a panorama picture, but on a screenshot.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yep.
Cool. Nice. So I mentioned this app in a previous podcast. Can't remember which one, but I had it on my phone and I'd actually never really used it in a practical application. But IKEA has this app called IKEA Place, and it basically takes advantage of the Apple AR kit, augmented reality. And so my wife and I were at IKEA this past weekend, and we looked at a couple of pieces of furniture, and you know, we kind of ran into the same, is this thing going to fit in our place?
Yep.
And we weren't ready to buy it there, but we wanted to like take dimensions and get an idea of it. So we started writing down the dimensions in my phone, and then I realized, holy crap, I got this app on my phone that has it. So I looked it up in the catalog. Those products were in the catalog. Went home, opened up the app, pulled up the items that we had saved, that they made it pretty easy to save or favorite, and then placed the actual, in this case, it was a chair. Another one, it was a couch, like inside our room.
Awesome.
And it was to scale everything. And the kind of weird thing about it is if you have a piece of furniture that's there already, it kind of wonks out a little bit.
It can't occlude it out of.
Exactly. But one of the chair that we were trying to put, there's nothing there right now. It's just a blank wall. And it was awesome just to see it, imagine like how it actually looked. So normally like, you take the measuring tape out, you measure to see how long it is, but you don't really get an idea of what it looks like there. But this is the first time I actually used AR in like a practical, you know, instead of dinosaurs crawling through your screen or through a living room or whatever.
Or some funny face filter.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, this was like a really practical application of how AR can be used. And for e-commerce or any really retail vendor who needs to practice with placing space and all that kind of stuff. It was a really good example of how it could be of how to use it. So IKEA, good job. I think they did. There's a lot of other companies out there that do sort of this AR with furniture and whatnot. But ultimately, I think that's kind of the future application of it. So it's really cool to start seeing developers start using that AR kit, and I can't wait to start seeing what other people how other developers are going to start using it moving forward. So that was the other app that I guess it wasn't a new one for me. It was sitting on my, like a lot of other apps, it was sitting on my phone.
Well, yeah, cool. So I've used that app, and I thought it was, I first used it quite a while ago. IKEA had a version that was like 0.9 or I don't know. It wasn't version 1 like it is now, or I don't even know what version they're actually on. I'm just talking a bunch of nonsense, but I used it back in the day before AR actually existed as far as being AR kit or
cool. Yeah.
With with the tools that are built into the phone these days. IKEA did this really cool thing where you would take a picture of the catalog, or you would hold the phone. This is on like iPhone 4 or something like that. You hold your camera, like you're looking at your phone, you hold your camera in a position so that it maps out the dimensions of their catalog. And based off of those dimensions, it could calculate a flat surface.
Okay.
So then you could put anything down because it knew that the flat surface was. So you would throw the catalog like on the floor or on a table, and you would hold your phone up, and
that would be the reference point.
Exactly. That's the reference point. Right. Yep. So now that all gets calculated in real time with the AR kit cameras and stuff like that, and some of the other proximity sensing.
So they were really on top of this stuff.
So they were on top of this a long time ago.
Huh?
Yeah. So
interesting.
And there was another handful of other AR type apps like that before AR. This was before they even were really calling it AR. But yeah, IKEA was doing this for quite some time, but no one paid attention to it because it was slow. It was kind of clunky.
Yeah, right.
A lot of people didn't understand how it worked.
It's seamless now, man.
It's
so
exactly.
Good.
So there was that app, and then there was this other measuring app, and I think we may have touched on a couple measuring apps in the past, but this one did the same thing. You basically would hold your camera out and look around a room and plot points where the corners of a wall and the floor met. And it would triangulate, basically reverse trigonometry type solve your positioning, so it could tell where you were versus where you put those points, and then it would calculate a flat surface. So there's been a bunch of cool stuff that they've done leading up to get where we are now.
No, I think when I first started using this thing, it's just the whole UX. It's very seamless,
right?
It feels natural. Like I think anybody could sort of figure it out,
right?
You know what I mean? And it doesn't feel clunky anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they went through a lot of versions.
Sure, I'm sure. Yeah,
I mean,
but it's cool. Like I'm sure if you're a furniture manufacturer or whatever, like when you saw ARKit, your eyes probably just
right.
Like now I have the opportunity to do like a seamless experience.
Right.
Like,
but think about this. Let's talk about the marketing real quick. Think about all the data you're collecting, because you understand what people are placing, where they're placing it. They're naming this room particular. You can name your room. I'm assuming, right? You can tell what room you're in.
And there's a favorites.
Right. So you probably have to put some information into it. You have to put, sign up through the app or whatever.
Which becomes prime for retargeting folks.
Exactly.
Like, hey, by the way, you forgot about your couch, or you forgot about this, or forgot about that. Yeah. It's more exactly like you said, it's just more data points that are available for marketers to make, intelligent decisions on how to
design decisions, right?
Sure.
Because they can tell like, oh, this was really trending the last 5 years. Let's build something like this, or bring it back, or however they want to spin that.
The IKEA mom drawer and bed set is never going to go away, by the way. But maybe they can find ways to integrate different versions of it. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. That's. That app, and like you said, looking forward to everything AR coming in the future. Is going to be crazy.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a very practical application to our daily lives moving forward. So I'm really excited to see, what the app developers are going to do out there. So it's going to be an interesting, next, how many years do you think you're going to see before you see that AR ecosystem sort of?
I 2-3 years.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's going to be
less than 5, huh?
Less than 5, definitely. You're already starting to see it in cars. Obviously all the sensory things that are happening on the outside of cars for for autonomous driving.
one thing I heard, Mark Cuban, he's a big, investor, venture capital investor. And I think like 2 or 3 years ago, I think he started making really big bets on sensor hardware manufacturers because of like, it's like, hey, we can have the best software in the world, but if there's no physical connection from hardware to software, how are you going to make the software do really cool things? So the sensors are a lot better now, right?
Yeah. Oh,
they're
yeah,
smaller.
Totally. I mean,
they take less energy.
Yeah.
They can take more data in.
Well, just think about just like the Tesla driving itself.
Oh, yeah. That's
nuts. I mean, that leap and bound right there is crazy. I mean, a couple of years ago, we were looking at the Google cars with like almost another car on top of it as the sensors and all the machinery and computers, and now all this is built into a sleek looking car. It's come a long way, and it's going to move even faster.
I bet you if the NTSA or whatever the regulatory body wasn't around, Elon Musk would probably have an autonomous driving car out there by now.
Yeah.
There's a video of a Tesla driving down the 405, and I just became really LA by starting naming off freeways by their numbers. But the 405 is the main freeway that goes north and south, basically in Southern California. And it's this guy who basically is driving his Tesla almost 40 miles from LAX down to like Orange County. And he's just hands off the wheel the whole time, flips the signal, the turn signal. Car starts to move to the right, stays in the lane, flips it back, moves back to the left. I mean, he could basically take his hands, eyes, everything off the car.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. To see where we are now.
Well, cool, guys. We're just going to go ahead and link all that stuff up in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment on the podcast. And if you guys have any questions, please hit us up. You can find us on any social media, Run with Tobe, or you can email us, ask@tobeagency.co. Cool, man. Well, that's going to segue us into, not really segue, it's kind of an unclean segue, but we'll go ahead and call it a clean segue. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. And that is something that we've touched on periodically throughout all the other episodes. And that's branding. Like, I know we've touched on it or we've mentioned branding. It's that giant B word that kind of hovers over everything.
Is it marketing? Is it branding? Are they the same thing?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it sales?
Is it
what
sales?
Does it have to do with my company?
Right. Yeah. There's always that, that bet. Is sales going to win or is marketing and branding going to win? Who's going to win the race? Is it the numbers or is it the feeling? Right. It's that, and it's that ominous, like, feeling thing that all of us creatives like to say. We like to say that, so it makes us feel this way.
So just to give people some background, like I handle on our agency more of the, I would say, less feeling driven stuff and more of the science driven stuff. And Jared handles more of the art and feeling and emotion side of things. And just naturally in our personalities, we're just kind of gravitate towards those ways anyways. So this will be an interesting discussion for us to have, a talk about branding and what we both think about it.
And put it on the record finally.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, man. So like going back to this whole branding discussion, right? Do you think that, well, I guess let's put it this way. What is branding?
Right. And that's the kind of the title of today's and the theme of today's. So I went ahead and pulled out the definition.
There's paper in his hand if you didn't tell.
I pulled out the definition, or one of the many definitions. This one, I don't know. This one seemed to hit the nail on the head to me, at least. A brand is a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct from those other sellers. I don't know. I thought that was pretty good.
That's interesting because I never associated something physical with a brand, although now that it's put this way, it's almost always physical.
Right.
I think that's actually a great definition. And the key there, I think, is how do you differentiate yourself from somebody else? Like there's a gazillion car manufacturers. Right. There's a bunch of computer and electronics manufacturers. Like besides design, besides the product feature list, because in the end, like everyone has the same features.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the physical part, definitely. I think if you go back in like Game of Thrones type, cue the music, back in the Game of Thrones times, right? It was like you hold up your flag and that's your brand, right?
Right.
or
and it's
you
supposed to instill fear or
exactly, or
whatever.
what your house stands for, right? Or if you go back to like, and I think they still do this, unfortunately, but cattle prodding, where you brand you actually put a stamp,
Right.
burn it into somebody.
Right.
They do that in fraternities. Wait, do you have one?
Let's not talk about that.
So it can be physical, which is obviously those are physical,
Yep.
but it in this definition also it talks about the name, the term, the design.
Sure.
So it can be visual. It doesn't have to be a physical element. But yeah, it's to me it's why you do what you do.
Okay.
So that's super high level, broad, right? But
Interesting.
it's like, I think, and I don't know if I'm right or if anybody else out there agrees with me. And again, I don't want to say we're not branding experts, but we're not branding experts because it's not our 100% forte. We don't spend all of our time, working in this area. But we both understand it, and clearly, we've built other businesses, so we do get, the reasons why it's so important and why it means so much to your company. But I think that it goes down to, why do you wake up in the morning and do what you do? Because I think that resonates through either your personal brand or the company that you're building, or even you as a person, just as a worker. Like you often hear times like, oh, this person's a hard worker or this person's a lazy worker. And, that's unfortunately your brand. If you don't show up to work on time every day and people think you're lazy, they're going to think you're a lazy brand.
Sure.
Right. And I mean, and again, this is super high level, and this is going like way beyond just like what, Coca-Cola stands for, or Apple, or any of these other companies. But I think at the root of it, it's what you do, why you do what you do.
No, that's an interesting perspective. I think for me, it's about the emotion that your brand leaves with someone, and sort of that emotional perception that a person has about your company or your product or your service, right? And I think it, in a way, in a lot of ways, what you brought up is it a lazy brand? Is it a hardworking? Do they work for the customer? Whatever the case is, you're trying to bring a human element to something that isn't human, right? Like they always say like an LLC or whatever is like another entity, like a person, basically, right? But ultimately, it's just paper. Your product, your service is just metal and nuts and bolts, or your services are just paper, or whatever or the services that you put down on paper. For me, it's more about like, how do you humanize what you're trying to sell, right? And how do you message that idea to make an emotional connection with someone? And I think a lot of times, like when we think about branding, you think about all the big brands that do it really well out there. They try to touch you, not necessarily in your head, but in your heart. Right. And I think that's, for me, what branding is about. And that's how you differentiate yourself.
Totally.
Going back to your definition again, that's how you differentiate yourself from the competition. Is how do you connect with the other human beings that your product or service is trying to sell? And to me, the brands that do that very, very well, they find a way to connect with those folks,
right?
To pull on the heartstrings a little bit.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
At scale.
And that's something like, we always talk about Apple in this podcast, but they found a way to build a brand under one logo, one name, right?
Yep.
That somehow tugs on the heartstrings of professionals, right?
Right.
People, they started out because they only wanted to really target like high-end graphic designers, like artists basically, right? And then eventually that folded over into the masses. But the reason why I think Apple's so masterful at what they do is because they didn't have to do like Apple Pro, right?
Yeah.
And Apple Consumer. Everything is Apple, but they still have that diehard allegiance from the old school days. And I'm sure those people have fallen off. There's probably obviously people who have fallen by the wayside. Kind of doesn't like that Apple's gone in the consumer direction, but they have kept that brand basically in place for however many years now, right? So to me, when you start looking at people to do that, like you said, at scale, I mean, those are the people who we study, we try to find ways to emulate them, like all that kind of stuff, right?
Right. So going back to the Apple thing, and this is kind of, I guess, ties in with what I was saying about how it's you do. Why do you wake up in the morning? You do what you do, right? Well, everything you just said, I guess, to be argued or to not be argued, it could be, there's going to be people out there that are going to scorch us right now. But all that is stemming from the DNA of Steve Jobs, right?
Right.
He set out, no matter what cost, whether you agree with that or not, he set out to build the best products in the world. That was the goal of the company. And, that's user experience, user.
It's what he thought was important
Exactly.
to do it, right? And it's about that blend of hardware design, software design, within software design, the user and obviously hardware as well.
Yeah, how it feels when you touch it, how it makes you feel when you pull it out of your laptop case.
Right.
How you feel when you pull. I remember personally having iPhone 1. And this is not the Apple podcast, sorry guys. But I remember having iPhone 1, and I remember how cool I felt when I pulled out iPhone 1, because at the time it was really expensive or really hard to get or whatever reason. But I remember specifically being one of the only people that I knew in a circle of friends or whatever that had an iPhone. Like it or hate it, people were still like, wow. And I remember that feeling of like, I knew I was getting it because I wanted the product, because I knew how good the product was going to be. But to have that little bonus of, I feel pretty cool, that's deep in the branding.
That's a byproduct of so many things, right? It's their marketing, how the brand is presented in their marketing. It's how they package the damn thing.
Right.
Everyone talks about like how great it feels to open any Apple product. It doesn't matter if it's a pair of AirPods, something as small as AirPods, to buying a brand new MacBook Pro, right? When you open that thing, that is part of the brand experience.
Yeah.
And I think when companies think of details, and going back to your example about the insurance company, the health insurance company we talked about earlier, that is a detail that where the small things really truly matter in those details when it comes to your brand, your business card, the media that you actually print out, the weight of the paper, the way the box and packaging is designed, all of
copy.
All of those things are super important to instilling that emotional component that you just talked about, feeling cool that you got the product.
Exactly.
It's not just because, and in fact, at the time, that was not the most advanced phone on the market, right?
No, it wasn't.
It couldn't do crap like copy and paste. It couldn't do a bunch of things that
it couldn't do a lot. Yeah.
But still people it took a little bit of while to get some traction, at least with the masses. Right. But for the diehards out there, the people who truly believe in the brand, those little details are what give that emotional, this is really freaking cool that I can slide across my screen and unlock the phone. You know what I mean? It's not just that software and hardware combination, but it's everything previous to that, everything after that, that kind of feeds what the brand is.
Yep, exactly.
So there's so many details that I think a lot of people miss. And quite frankly, even with us in our agency, and us trying to build our own brand, we miss a lot of those details, right?
We do. Yeah. And I think it's not that we miss them because we skim over them, but sometimes I also think that a brand it's a live organism.
Yeah,
it's always evolving.
Yep.
So
it's going to look ugly some days. It's going to look awesome some days. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not something that's ever static. It's not like, I got a logo and a website, we're done. No, it's a live organism. We're always going to be.
I mean, even how many iterations of Apple have they gone through their logo? Right. I mean, it started out with color. Now it's basically monochrome.
Yep.
Right. It's just. So yeah, I think that's a good point. You're never done with branding, right?
That's it, and another company I kind of want to focus on is Facebook.
Okay.
I mean, they kind of have written a new version of this branding message because they have so many products, they touch so many people. Most people think Facebook is just something you just go on there and you post up your, picture of your dog or, whatever.
Right.
And then you hopefully 100 of your friends like it and then you go away. Right. That's what a lot of people think Facebook is. But if you zoom out and really take a second to analyze Facebook itself and Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO and founder, Facebook is their most important focus is impact and building social value worldwide. So if you stop and think about those two things, think about things like now they've connected people where people couldn't connect with a telephone.
Sure. Right.
Because cellular advanced so much faster than
you just couldn't call people long distance because you didn't want to pay long distance.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. But just because of the internet, right? We were able to touch these corners of the world that, didn't have access. They've gone into helping people in crisis situations.
Sure.
The FBI, they're in the news with the FBI like every other day because the FBI is digging through whatever records or, trying to help, solve a case or whatever. But there's other, there's good things about it. Like during mass, natural disasters, people can now check in that they're safe. Right. So there's all these things that they've built that a lot of people think, oh, that's just another feature Facebook's doing. Oh, they just want people to, be on the network and, tag themselves or whatever. But if you just step back and peel the layers back, you really see that building social value and, and connecting a massive network is what their bread and butter is and what their brand is.
So I'll provide a counterpoint to that. I think because you have to peel the layers of the onion back and you have to take a step back so far, and I think you said earlier that you're not an expert in branding. I would probably say you are, but I would say that for me, I think they have a big brand crisis right now. I think everything that's been going on with all this fake news, everything going on around Russia, like there is an issue with their brand right now, and they've lost some of that social equity.
Totally.
In a
way.
I
can. Because, what? You're providing a great counterpunch,
right? Because I think in a lot of ways they've mismanaged their brand, and you can see that in the recent post that Zuckerberg put up about this whole algorithm change for Facebook, saying that basically they're just going to put stuff on the newsfeed that is kind of between your own network and not so much focused on brands or publishers. And I think it's an effort to counteract and get back to what their brand is supposed to be about. I think they've done a kind of a poor job of managing. I think what you're saying is correct in that that's what they want to be, but how you want to be versus how you're perceived.
Yeah,
perception is reality.
Sure,
bro,
sure.
So in a way, I kind of feel like Facebook is on their heels a little bit right now with how they presented their brand. But if they can get back, and I think they're taking the right steps, dude. Zuck is a smart dude. There's a lot of smart dudes and girls.
I mean, they're going to figure it out.
They'll figure it out. But I think ultimately, like that's an example of how you got to be very careful when you get your brand to scale.
Totally.
Right. And we're not anywhere near there, but
right.
we actually are working with some clients who I would say do have a brand at scale. And it's pretty fascinating to work with them because we work more on the marketing side and the advertising side with them. But it's pretty interesting to see how closely guarded they take care of their brand. In fact, one of the clients we work with has an entire brand protection team who's completely dedicated to everything tactical, like making sure there's no counterfeiters out there using the company's name, to just making sure that every piece of creative is in alignment with the brand guides and standards, So I think it's
when you get to that kind of scale, you kind of have to, right?
It's crazy, man. I never, and working with this client just gave me a whole nother exposure to like how difficult it is once you get to punching at that level, what I mean, at that weight. How important it is to make sure that you take care of your brand and that you make sure it's positioned correctly. Otherwise, there could be some issues like I think that Facebook is facing right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people will say or agree, at least a lot of marketers out there, to this next thing I'm about to say, and that's marketing and advertising kind of ruined that part of Facebook.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
so funny you say that, yeah.
I mean, I've heard many top level marketers talk about if there's a platform out there, they're going to just beat it until it's dead.
It's so funny you say that. Yeah. Because I was actually thinking of, so HubSpot, the company we've partnered with, their marketing automation technology platform, they put up a Facebook post yesterday about basically the title is marketers F everything up. Right. And
I didn't see that.
I'll show it to you later. But it's so timely that you mentioned this, but the post basically is that, yeah, ebooks and
Everything,
checklists and all those things, they were really valuable things before until marketers got their hands on that crap, and then they effed everything up because now it's like everyone's putting out a damn ebook that has no value to give.
Right.
Basically marketers, they whore everything
Well,
out.
that happens with everything, right?
Yeah. And I think our
like Uber was a great idea at first, but now that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can drive an Uber car, it kind of makes a bunch of assholes on the road.
Yeah, totally, man. And there's some shady Uber X drivers out there and whatnot, who aren't licensed through Uber Black or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, there's been people out there putting fake, they put fake Uber stickers on there and they just pull up to random spots.
You're kidding me. I didn't know that.
No, it's like an epidemic.
That's ridiculous.
Just be careful out there when you're taking Uber.
But no, I think going back, like, even for us, that's one of our biggest challenges is that our clients hire us to create content for them. And we just don't want to create junk,
right.
There's already a lot of
junk.
I mean,
out there. We're always quality over quantity anyway.
Yep.
And that's actually that segues nicely into our next topic, which is brand values. That's one of our brand values. We always, make sure that, the quality is as good or not. If it's not there, then we're not just going to put it out there to hit numbers and hit metrics. So let me ask you, what do brand values mean to you?
So I think when we talk about brand, we always talk about sort of the customer facing side of the company, right? Who we sell to, who we build our product for, how we want to position the company to the people who are going to buy our product or service. But to me, brand values are actually even more important internally within the company, because ultimately it comes down to how you define your brand values is who you hire, who you fire, right? How you decide to build the structure of your company, where you decide to invest, right? And I've seen this a lot more recently in working with our clients. And for example, like one of our clients, whenever someone does something great, people actually applaud during a random meeting, like during a staff meeting. I'm sitting there and it's like it was a video conference, but I'm like, everyone's clapping for this person. I'm like, what the hell is going on right now? But that's because I've never been in a company that had part of their brand values to show appreciation and gratitude as part of
that's awesome.
Whether they do it for their customers or for their employees as well. And they actually put as part of their brand values.
That's kind of like more of like a sport team mentality.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, totally. So to me, it's like brand values are important again, because it talks about, externally facing what your product is, how you're positioning it, who you're going to sell it to, what colors are going to invoke the best emotion, all the things we talked about earlier. But to me, as a business owner and someone trying to build the values and culture of my business, that should also shine through internally within the company.
Right.
So I think it goes both in and out of the company in a way. So for me, it's the brand values are extremely important.
Yeah, that's a great point. And brand values, to me, I always think of a lot more of the external.
Sure. Yeah.
I do think about the internal thing because it is super important. I mean, we can take a look at, companies like Google and Facebook and Apple and these companies. You can hear, go on Glassdoor and see what people are saying about their, about the company.
Well, no, but even Google originally, they had this mantra, like, just don't be evil.
Right.
Right. And that honestly, when I first heard of it, I was like, that's pretty cool that such a big company would say that. There's some things that have happened with Google, and
until you get a whole bunch of passive
aggressive exactly. There's been a few things that have happened to Google over the past few years that may really challenge that mantra.
Yeah,
but that's an example of a brand value that you communicate externally to your customers, but also internally to your employees and the people who have built the company as well. So it goes both ways.
Sure.
I think
of course.
When we define brand values, it's important to make sure they trickle down or trickle sideways or whatever to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I mean, to me, and this is probably just because of the way I was raised, but at any level of any company, to me, the janitor is always as important as the CEO.
Exactly.
And again, the internal values, making sure that everybody feels equal, everybody feels like they have the same opportunities.
Yep.
Even though obviously things like salary and other things dictate that, there is a little bit of inequality, but yeah, to make everybody feel at least they all have the same shot.
Yep.
I think is super important.
So that's again, crafting that emotion, that the customer's emotional connection to your product or service. It's just as difficult to craft the employees'
Totally.
emotional attachment
Yeah, totally.
to your company's values as well.
Right.
And you know, some people may think we're mixing like culture, like company culture values with maybe
But I
brand
think culture
values.
is part of the brand.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's what defines.
I think it's one and the same.
Right?
Yeah.
It defines.
I mean, I have
other.
written down here on my notes that the core values are the brand soul. You know, whether you want to mix culture. I mean, again, going back to things like places like Google, you know, everybody talks about how cool it is to go to work and eat breakfast and, you know, be, you know, fun Fridays and all these different things. And I've been part of some companies that they try to do those things, but they can't really achieve it. And they still have this really off-putting feeling that they make everybody kind of feel like they're in their place, even though everybody comes to Friday afternoon beer pong or, you know, whatever.
Right. But they don't live and feel it.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
it's just I'm doing this because other people are doing it.
It's just a charade. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So you can totally feel as, you know, as an employee or as a customer, you know, even customers can feel when something's a little off and a little fake. And, you know, those are the companies that don't get, you know, as much love. I would say if you were to put Apple mobile versus Samsung mobile, you know, right there is a great case. You know, you have diehard Samsung people, but they're not diehard to the brand. They're just like, oh, I want something different than an iPhone.
Oh man, we're gonna get flamed for this. I know.
I know. All right. So let's jump into the last thing. We got about 10 minutes left here.
Yep.
This is going to be art versus science.
Okay. Yep.
Numbers versus paintbrush. Calculator versus paintbrush. Whatever.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. What comes first, the business plan or the brand plan?
Do you want me to go first?
Go. Jump in.
So for me, it's about understanding the business plan first. And I already gave you guys a disclaimer about I can already tell what Jared's answer is going to be, or maybe I'm being prescriptive here. But for me, it's kind of hard to flesh out what the brand is. When I think of a business plan, I think of what's your product or service? Who are you building it for? How are you going to distribute it? All that sort of thing, right? And for me, it's hard to really focus in on who I want to focus the brand on until I really understand the problem I'm trying to solve with my product or service, the people that I'm trying to solve it for. Because I think, again, I'm looking at this I'm kind of going back on what I just said, but looking at this a little more externally. But for me, like it's understanding about kind of the external factors that need to go into what you're going to craft that brand around, right? And then once that's been established, once you have that foundation, because for me, you know, coming from a consulting background and a finance background where I've always analyzed companies and looked at companies, that's the foundation of the business, right? And then the brand kind of encapsulates that foundation.
Okay.
So it goes around it. You know what I mean? So imagine like a rectangular box and then a circle going around it, and the circle being the brand.
The business plan is the yolk.
There you go.
The white part is, and the shell of the brand.
You get me, man. You get me, man.
Yeah, I actually would love to disagree. That's a great way to look at it. Yep. And I don't think a lot of people do look at it that way.
Sure.
I think, you know, they just dive right into the numbers and they look at the exit, which, you know, it's important to look at the exit early, but I think they look at the exit way before anything.
Yeah, right.
And I think it can mislead you.
When you say exit, you mean like I'm going to sell out of my company at a 4x valuation?
Whatever. Yeah, either that or, you know, I'm going to exit out of this product and go into the next product.
Okay, right. Got it.
Either way, some exit out of whatever the plan you were building. Because you could build a product plan or a business plan, you know, and they're kind of similar.
Yep.
As far as roadmap wise.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, I need to know why I'm doing it.
Yeah, sure.
And who I'm doing it for and what its purpose will be. So it kind of does encapsulate some of the stuff that you're talking about.
Yep.
But I want to make sure that I focus on, am I getting the core values that I want to shine through this product?
You know, yeah, right.
Am I getting, you know, my message across? Because if not, then I don't want to waste time building a business plan and thinking I can build a business and force it when there's no feeling behind it. Yeah. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense.
No, fair. That's fair. I
do think they go hand in hand almost. I don't think there's a clear winner.
You're right. And I think what it comes back to is like going back to this whole emotional connection. Typically, you form an emotional connection with someone when you're able. One of the ways you form an emotional connection with someone is you're able to solve a problem.
Right.
So like startup business 101, right? Like what effing problem are you trying to solve?
Yep.
Is there actually a problem? And then that in a way helps define how you position the brand around
Right.
how you make that emotional connection to that person through the problem you're solving. And I think branding is sort of the act of figuring out how to message that.
Right.
Right. Whether it's through your logo, your insurance package, the type font you use, right?
Yep, totally.
The colors you use, all those things. And maybe I'm thinking like too kind of like technical in terms of branding when I thought about this question. But if you take a step back and you really just think about it, it's like, how do you make that emotional connection with a person via your branding? But you only make that, to me, you make that emotional connection by figuring out what problem you're going to solve for them, which also relates to the business plan.
Right. But it also relates to, do I even want to solve this problem? Do I feel this, do I feel a need to solve this problem? So I think it does go hand in hand.
It's kind of that, like, I can make $100 million doing this thing, but I hate doing it.
Right. I'm taking the $100 million.
I don't know if you would, but the thing is that you may not even get to that 100 million because you hate doing it, and it'll show through in the product, service, branding, whatever you're doing.
Right.
Unless you go and hire some really effing smart people.
And then you just sit.
Who care about it. Yeah.
Sit on the beach, sip a drink.
But none of us have that kind of money or clout or whatever. Few of us have that money or clout or whatever. Right. I sure as hell don't. So
yeah. Cool, man. Well, I don't know. That was a great deep dive into branding.
Yeah, it's a really abstract thing to talk about. I'll be honest with you, man. And when a lot of clients, we talk about branding, and I think the reason why you said like we're not like experts in this area is because, we actually have someone here in our office that is a branding expert, and she's launched some very marquee brands in some really cool spaces, and it's just very interesting to think how every discussion you have with someone about a brand, it veers off in a lot of different directions because it is a very abstract thing to talk about. It's definitely more art than science, right?
Yeah,
would you say so?
It's more emotional and less analytic.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it was actually really good for us to talk about this because it helped get the hamster wheel spinning a little bit in my head as to like what is branding actually? That's what it all came down to, right? And so for me, the word emotion keeps coming up and up over and over and over again. And I think I still kind of revert back to that idea of
the old EQ over IQ.
Totally, right? It's like, how do you message? How do you present yourself? How do you produce something tangible to relay something that's intangible?
Right. And that's
the hard part.
It's hard. It's really hard. Not every, a lot of people surface level think that branding is just like, I'm going to slap a logo and a name on this thing and then put it out there. And it's, it goes a lot deeper than that.
And it's really hard to measure the ROI on it.
You can't.
Which is even like,
because it's it's a live organism and it's always evolving. And there's no stopping point where you're like, okay, let's take some like measurable things from this.
Yeah. And the thing is, it crosses over and influences so many other things.
And it's it's almost so much like art that it'll do so much better. If you do it right, it'll live forever when you're gone and you'll never be able to measure that, right?
Coca-Cola, right?
Exactly.
Whatever. All the brands that we think of today, for sure. No, man, this was a good conversation. It actually helped me think about it a little bit more, and we're much more focused on, more of the marketing and, creative content side of things. So it's good for us to talk. And hopefully all of you out there got some value from this. And if you have any thoughts, and want to tell us we're all idiots because we have no idea what we're talking about, especially if you're a branding expert, I'd love to talk to you. Yeah, please email us, give us a call, hit us up on social, whatever it is. Once again, you can email us at ask@tobeagency.co, and you can hit us up on social @runwithtobe on all social platforms. That's going to do it for today, guys. We will see you on the next one. We are doing this every other week, so we got one coming out every other week now. So make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that. And you can find us on all of the streaming platforms, including Spotify. So make sure you subscribe.